Welcome to the GreenPilled Network podcast. If you're just joining us, we are building a coordination, a network society of thousands of hackers, dreamers, and doers using crypto to bring positive sum digital systems to the world. This podcast features the people who are doing it, and we publish a season of 5 to 10 episodes every couple months. This season is all about lean, mean capital allocation machines. Capital allocation is the process of deciding how to spend or allocate resources to maximize returns. With Web3, we can maximize not just financial returns, but achieve impact equals profit, ecosystem growth, public goods funding, or protopia. So how do we build the crypto economic systems that precisely allocate capital at scale? And what are the coolest experiments? These are the themes of season 4 of Greenpill Lean Mean Capital Allocation Machines. My guests today are members of the Grants Lab team at Gitcoin, and we're here to talk about Gitcoin Grants Round 20, which is Gitcoin's quarterly campaign to fund what matters in the Ethereum ecosystem. GG20 goes until May 7th, and there is $1.6 million worth of matching to match your contributions to your favorite projects in the ecosystem. You can check those out at grants.gitcoin.co. And today on the episode, we are talking about Gitcoin Grants Round 20 and the latest in the Gitcoin ecosystem. Meg Lister, Sav, Mathilda, and Sejal are joining this episode. As soon as we cut over to the main episode, they will be doing introductions of themselves. So let's do that right now. Enjoy. Hey, everyone. Welcome to our GG20 episode.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Thanks for having us.
Let's start off with a quick round of episodes. Maybe, Meg, we'll start with you, and you can popcorn to the next person on the panel.
All right. I'm Meg. I am the GM of Grants Labs at Gitcoin. Grants Labs is our business unit that houses all things grants. So we work on product development and product adoption, and also are one of the many stewards of the Gitcoin Grants program across the Gitcoin team and community. Actually, big news. Today is my 1-year anniversary with Gitcoin. So it's a particularly exciting day to be on the Greenpill pod. And I will pass it over to Sav for an introduction.
Awesome. I am Sav. I work in the Grants Lab team as well. I work around kind of partnerships, business development, and I also help to work on the Gitcoin Grants program with the team that's on this call. I'll popcorn it to Sejal.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us, Awaki. This is really special because I don't think we have done an episode with the team together. So definitely very special. I'm Sejal. I work in the Grants Lab unit at Gitcoin, and I work very closely with Sav. So we run Gitcoin Grants program along with Mathilda, and also run program for other ecosystems. And my role at Gitcoin is grants specialist. Yes, passing to Mathilda.
Hey, yeah, I also just want to echo this is really special. Thank you for having me and having us on the episode. So yeah, I contribute to the ecosystem collective at Gitcoin. I've been at Gitcoin for almost 2 years now, and my role has kind of evolved since I started, but I am now the Gitcoin Grants comms lead. So yeah, that is my main role now, which is really exciting.
Thanks, y'all. I think while we're doing a round of intros, I should also mention that I'm one of the co-founders of Gitcoin. So during this episode, I'm primarily going to be playing Greenpill podcast host, but disclaimer for the audience, I am also working on Gitcoin. I hold GTC, and so just want everyone to be aware of that as we're listening to the episode. So let's talk about GG20, which is Gitcoin's 20th grants round. What is GG20? When is it running? Tell us all the details. Maybe Mathilda, we'll go to you first.
Yeah, so GG20, as you mentioned, it's our first round of 2024. It is also the 20th round of Gitcoin grants. It started April 23rd. Donations went live on April 23rd, and it is live until May 7th at 23:59 UTC. It's like burned into my brain by now. There's like a lot of changes that have happened this round, but I'm sure that Sav and Meg and Sejal will also jump in on that. Super exciting. We've got 4 OSS rounds, and we've got 5 community rounds that were matched by Gitcoin. I'm happy to also go more into detail about the community round structure and the new governance process, as well as we've got a few independent rounds that have also spun up as well. So there's like a matching pool, I think, of 1.6 million now in total for all the rounds, which is super, super exciting.
I can probably hop in there as well. So first, it's must be my 1 year anniversary or close to that as well, because I started around the same time as Meg. So I don't keep track of those things as much as I should, but that's exciting. I've been here now through a few different GG rounds, GG18, GG19, and into GG20. In terms of the structure of GG20, in many ways, it's back to the original roots of the Gitcoin grants program, with a focus on open source software. Across the rounds that we have, the program rounds that Gitcoin runs that are funded by the community contributions that we've got over these years, they're squarely focused on OSS. That includes the dApps and apps round, dev tooling, Web3 infrastructure, and then an experimental round that we're doing around hackathons. But in addition to that, we also have the community rounds that are running alongside the program rounds. Those are ones that we're especially excited about, where they involve a form of community governance. We brought in a community council of people that are not direct contributors to Gitcoin. They were given a budget, for the rounds, where Gitcoin would provide matching funds, and then also make decisions on what rounds would be accepted for those matching funds and run alongside the GG program rounds. And so, like I mentioned, we're kind of back to our roots, and kind of focusing on OSS. But with that, we still left the door open to, have other communities come in and ultimately fund what matters to them through that community round structure.
Thanks, Sal. Sejal, anything to add?
It's pretty much covered, but I just want to add that there are a lot of things that we have done in this round which are very different and which are new. So I'm really excited to talk more about that. And I joined Gitcoin during GG19. So this is my second round, and there's a huge difference in the way things have been. And super excited to share more on that.
Meg, anything to add?
I will double click, because I hope that we get into this in more depth in a couple minutes, on the community council. I think that is my favorite thing that we've rolled out for GG20. And I'm so excited to hear the team talk about it more, as well as maybe we do a little brainstorming about how this could be applied to other ecosystems, or how we might double down on this in the future.
Should we get into it? Tell us about the community council and what's exciting about it. What did we learn from it? And how does it work, and what problem does it solve?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one first. This was an idea that was brought up by Sav and Meg, and then I kind of ran with my team to get this set up. It's been such an exciting process, to be honest. So the idea was that, before we had community rounds, if a community wanted to run a round during a GG round, it was a bit of a different process. They had to raise a minimum matching pool, and it was like a Gitcoin focused decision almost. And we wanted to really push the decision making of that out to the edges and really just make it more of a community led process. So with that in mind, we wanted to not have Gitcoin full-time contributors make the decision around who the rounds are going to be. So that's why we went through this whole process of electing an external council. I think there were only two criteria. You couldn't be a full-time Gitcoin contributor, and you also couldn't be a round operator in one of the rounds that would apply for funding. We had, I think, like 15 people self-nominate themselves, and which was amazing. And then we ended up doing a joke race, which was it was token gated with anyone that held, I think it was 50 GTC or more. We still wanted to use our governance token, but we didn't want it to be like a token weighted vote. So that's why we did it through Joke Race. And it was actually really successful. So we had 7 council members be elected through that process. And then we kicked off, and this was a brand new process that we kind of iterated as we were going. It was a big experiment, but I think there is a lot that we've learned so far and a lot that we want to adjust for future. I am actually busy with a retro on the whole process that I'll probably post out after GG20 on the forum. But yeah, it's been really great. Then we had, I think, also around 10 or 15 communities upload their proposals to the Gov forum. I think it was around then. I was overwhelmed by the interest in how many communities wanted to be part of GG20 and that, applied for extra matching. And then, the community council then held like they reviewed and held the vote as well, and then the top five were selected for matching. So it is definitely a process that I think we can adjust and iterate for future rounds. But yeah, we've learned quite a lot so far. But it's been great. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything to that.
I would jump in around kind of how we got to the decision around community rounds. For anyone that's familiar with Gitcoin grants, that we ran a Web3 community round for a number of rounds previously. It was a hard decision internally for us to look at moving away from the Web3 community round, but we felt that there were some drivers there. One, we wanted to get back to the original intent of Gitcoin grants and really make sure that the funds that were given to us by the community were stewarded towards open source software. And so that was the big change that we made with our program rounds. But in that, we still wanted to allow the ability for any community to come in and kind of fund what matters to them, as we say. And we felt that a great way to do that was enabling this community council to help us make that decision. And so we took some of the funds that previously were allocated for that Web3 community round, we repositioned those with the community council, and ultimately worked to decentralize that decision making quite quickly, and so I'm definitely happy with the results and how it's all turned out. There's been a lot of lessons learned over the past few weeks, so I think we'll definitely take those and figure out how that can apply to further GG rounds as we look forward. The other part of that is we wanted to address a common complaint we saw with Gitcoin grants around subjectivity when it came to how Gitcoin makes decisions on what rounds are or what grantees are accepted into the rounds. I think previously we had an eligibility criteria that allowed too much subjectivity in terms of how those decisions were made by reviewers like myself and Sejal and others that were working on the Gitcoin grants program side of things. So addressing that one by moving that function of community rounds, which largely was one of the most subjective rounds in terms of do you qualify or not, to a function of community decision making, I think was definitely the right way to go. And then on the OSS program side, we actually did some work with Carl Servone, an open source observer, who anyone who listens to this show is familiar with his work, to strengthen our eligibility criteria for the OSS rounds and make that, we'll just say more science than art in terms of the qualifications and how we vet, grantees that are applying. We've done that in conjunction with a tool we built internally called Checker, which Checker basically uses OpenAI LLM to look at the eligibility criteria on rounds, compare that against applicants and the information that they've submitted, and help to return a result if that applicant is a good fit based on the eligibility criteria. It's greatly streamlined the process of review for the team that reviews hundreds of applications as they're coming in. And it's also started to get us down a path where the decisions that are being made and allowing grantees into rounds are less subjective, and we're relying on tools that kind of give us more information through OpenAI LLMs as well as Open Source Observer. Sejal, I don't know if there's anything you might want to add to that. You're in the big middle of working, in the grantee review process, and maybe kind of touch on also how we pulled in Team Tiger and some of the work they've done.
Yeah. Checker has been a game changer. So, like Saul said, it's an AI tool which helps us, which reviews and evaluates the project. And I'm really excited about the future of Checker. I might be getting ahead of myself, but there are a lot of things that are being planned with Checker where it can actually be integrated with GitHub and track the activity and a lot of those things. So, with Checker, the first thing is this was a big challenge that we faced last time in the last round, where how do we solve for timely communications and transparency? I remember this conversation with Meg where, we were discussing what is it we want to solve for this round. And, the two things were timely communications and transparency. And I think Checker helped us solve that, right? So we have been able to communicate to grantees on time that what's the status of their project, and it's very transparent. So we have these public links of Checker where you go and search for your project and you can actually see that what the reviewer said. So you will have the feedback there, and then there is an appeal process where people can obviously apply for a second review. by giving additional information. So this not only tells them the reason for the rationale behind approval or rejection, but gives them an opportunity to actually work on it and submit additional information, right? So that is something. Yeah, it's been a game changer. Like I can say that. And the other thing that I want to mention is Team Tiger. So who is Team Tiger and what is that, right? So Team Tiger is a team of four. Gitcoin citizens or Greenpill citizens, basically. We decided that how do we make sure, like, with Checker, how do we get people to actually, support the rounds? Because we not only got back to OSS, but we also went one step ahead, which is like we narrowed the scope of this round by actually creating four categories within this round, right? So, which essentially means, of course, like more work, more grantees, and even, more need of, coordinating better. So we got this team together, and for each round there is a POC, and I do want to take their names just as a shout out to them. So it's Wasabi, Ivan Molto, Easy, and David. Yes. And Team Tiger is amazing. They have been on top of all the projects. Like I can say that, and it's everything is reviewed along with the checker in so much depth that we have had very few grantees come back and tell us that, hey, we don't understand why we were rejected, right? So which is a huge win. And yeah, we are definitely looking forward to more changes in the checker and how we can leverage this team that we have now in future rounds as well.
Yeah, and shameless plug. Checker is something that works with anyone that's running rounds on top of Grant Stack. And so if that's something that you'd like to explore, we'd love to talk with you about that. We're actually working with other communities to start to use Checker. The Citizens round that ran previous to GG20 was actually an early user of Checker that provided a lot of great feedback. So big shout out to Chris and Umar and all the teams that worked on Citizen, because it was a lot of that feedback that fed into Checker that helped us improve and ramp up to the place that we're at, for GG20. And then one last thing I would kind of touch on with Team Tiger is we have kind of these peaks and valleys that happen in terms of activity with our team. And so there's a heightened, activity that happens obviously around Gitcoin grants. And I can remember conversations with Sejal around, oh my gosh, Gitcoin grants is coming up. Are we going to have the resources needed for all of these applications? With Team Tiger and with Checker, we have kept the pace, and I think that we've done as good a job as any in recent memory in terms of being able to get through all the applications, turn them around in a timely manner. So I've just been super happy, to see how all of that, has worked out.
One of the things that I always think about when I get to work with our internal team is what can other grants program managers learn from this? Like, one of the cool things about working at Gitcoin is we've been running grants almost as long as anybody else in Web3, and we're still learning so much. And I feel like there's a lot of valuable insights here in the role of bringing the community in, or people who are external to a grants council in doing reviews or setting criteria, as well as just the emphasis on clear and transparent communication. Every time we talk to grantees, particularly when we're doing research on behalf of GrantStack or our customers, we hear grantees complain about, like, I put so much time and effort into my application and it just goes off into a void. Like, what happened there? And so it's great to see that this is a key pain point for grantees across the industry, that we're finding ways to respond to it, and excited to pass these learnings on to other grants managers and grants councils as well.
To tag on to that, the way that we approached GG20 was we really looked at the community as our client, and we followed the same process in kind of designing and, implementing these rounds that we do with, many partners that we work with across the ecosystem today. And so, developing strong internal agreements across team to kind of understand, swim lanes and who's responsible for what's the communications plan, what does implementation, design, all of these things look like, and thinking through that well ahead of time. And so, so far, when we look at the results of GG20, they speak for themselves. We're on track to have the best grant round that we've had since moving over to GrantStack from the centralized C grants that we used previously. The highest producing round previously was GG18, and currently we're on track to best those numbers. And so call to action, please get out there and donate to Gitcoin grants, show your support and help us make that a reality. The other thing I would throw out there is we moved to the OSS rounds, there was actually a little bit of concern internally. Would we get the same amount of applications in? Would we get the same, volume of applications with making the change to the Web3 community round? It's been a great surprise to see the volume that's came in. Hundreds of applications have came in, and we're actually seeing more applications across now just OSS-centric rounds than we saw before with the Web3 community round included. You add that to the fact that we have these other community rounds that have seen great volume in their rounds too. And so far, we're on a path to have one of the better Gitcoin grants that we've had in some time, with the highest amount of applications, the best kind of turnaround time in terms of applications and overall grantee and kind of donor experience. So I couldn't be more pleased with the results, and that's a big shout out to this team and kind of the wider community, Team Tiger, Harriet, who was the primary dev on Checker, definitely want to call him out, and everyone that, from the Gitcoin side that supported and made all this possible.
Yeah, I would also say that it was when I was chatting with the community rounds, I just really appreciate all the partnership. It's like one of my favorite parts of a Gitcoin grants round is just partnering with all the community rounds during the round and just seeing how passionate they are about, funding their own ecosystem. And, something that I did notice though in applications, I kind of checked in halfway through applications with all the community rounds and Token Engineering Commons, for instance. They came back and said, wow, we've had I think double the applications that they've had in previous rounds. And I was like, wait, is this actually happening the way that we kind of envisioned it to happen with the Web3 community round? Because there was some concern about if that falls away, where are those grantees going to go? Where are they going to get funding? And the idea was, well, that's why we have the community rounds. So I think it's been a really beautiful kind of transition out, and we are seeing more applications in community rounds. We are seeing bigger engagement there, so yeah, that's been a really, really beautiful thing to see, as well as how successful the 4 OSS rounds are as well, and how many really good applications we got there as well.
I would just encourage any communities that might be interested in running rounds with the next season of Gitcoin grants. We'd love to hear from you. I'm sure we'll be posting to the forum soon the lessons learned on the current community rounds and what that proposal process would look like. One thing that we batted around quite a bit internally first was, do we want to have some minimum amount that a community has to raise in terms of matching funds before they apply? At the end of the day, we decided that we shouldn't have a minimum amount. We should make it where if you just got a great idea for a community round, there's no minimum amount that you've got to be able to bring to the table. It really just becomes about, does the community council, see that as a win for the wider community, a win for Gitcoin. And so don't think that there's barriers in place in terms of amount of funds that you have to raise if you've got a great idea for a community round. You look at the diversity in the rounds that we have today, and we have everything from ENS, a very established team, DAO that's been in the space for a long time, running rounds alongside, in many ways, community mainstays like Open Civics, Token Engineering Commons. We've got HyperCerts running around, which I think is getting them some great visibility for the work they're doing. And then there's a graduation of sorts that happen where you have the climate community round, the climate collective that previously ran rounds as part of Gitcoin. Now that is a separate entity that's running their own independent rounds. And it's great to see, that graduation of sorts that's happened that way, with them. And so I would just encourage any other communities out there that are interested in learning more about this. DM's open for me, DM's open for all of us. Pay attention to the forum. We'd love to hear from you, and we definitely would like to see even more applications come in. The last point I would add on that is we're also thinking through ways that, how do we support communities that still want to run QF rounds, but maybe for whatever reason weren't selected as community rounds as part of GG? A great example of this is the DeSci round. They've done great work in the community for a long time. Manuel over there is one of our more senior round operators. They're backed by Research Hub, that's kicked in some funds for matching. And so great story there, in terms of the DeSci round. We'd love to find more examples like that, where even if rounds weren't necessarily selected for the matching funds, how can we support them through the wider Gitcoin grants community as we do these GG rounds, right? And so we're open to ideas that way. Hopefully, the listeners kind of take away from this that in GG20, we tried to take a lot of community feedback, really take that to heart and figure out how can we make some changes to Gitcoin grants that addresses that. As we go into the next iterations, we want to do the same thing and continue to improve this, as we go forward.
Yeah, I think I can hop in there because it's something I've been thinking about a lot, like how the community round structure specifically is going to look like. I think something that we noticed is that, because we went through the selection, like the top 5 selection process for matching, the other community rounds that did apply, we still encouraged them to run around, but it kind of made them feel a little bit excluded because they didn't get matching. So we are thinking of ways of how we can iterate that, even if you're not selected, maybe there is still like a certain amount of rounds we can still support through marketing and through other resources. It just depends on our own resources, on exactly like how that's going to be set up, but definitely want to make sure that in the future, for the next round, like cool, like maybe the top 5 get funding, but then the top 8 or the top 10 can get marketing support or anything like that. But again, this is part of like a retro that I will be posting soon, and yeah, very open to feedback on that as well. That is one of the things that we did notice. But how can we make these just empower as many community rounds as possible through with these rounds? So yeah, and I'm really excited as well about the our partnership with Arbitrum this round, and thank Arb. I think that's been really, really successful as well.
Well, one thing I just wanted to call out from all of the amazing updates is that you can experience it today. If you want to contribute to Gitcoin Grants Round 20, then you can go to grants.gitcoin.co and check out all of the projects. And, I think that you can go to grants.gitcoin.co if you want to donate to the projects, but I think it's also a fun discovery experiment to figure out what's new and upcoming in the open source ecosystem, Web3 infrastructure, dev tooling, and then also in the more regen ecosystem, there's a climate round and open civics and hypercerts and everything like that. So discovery is definitely one reason why people should check out GG20. Well, seems like we've covered a lot of updates for what's happening in GG20. Is there anything we missed, or is there anything else that y'all want to say about what's new in GG20, or what listeners should pay attention to as they're checking out their grants?
The big thing for me is that we want the trend to continue, right? When we look at the future rounds, GG21, 22, these that will be coming, we'd love to see even more applications. We'd love to see more people come in, especially to like the dev tooling type rounds, or if we run the hackathon round again. I think that dev tooling traditionally has been underfunded. You see that, conversation a lot when you look on crypto Twitter and other places. And so that was a big part of the intent of us setting up a separate, dev tooling round to support those kinds of projects. We'd also like to see, more types of projects come in from the broader scope of open source software and maybe not so crypto centric, right? And so, intentionally, the eligibility criteria is built in such a way that really any open source software project, tooling dependency, et cetera, would qualify to come in and participate in the rounds. And so we'd love to see that number go up, obviously. So for those of you out there that are listening or may know people that are contributing, to open source projects that maybe didn't participate in this Gitcoin grants round, the call to action would be make them aware that, of the changes that we've made that way. And let's see if we can get, more OSS, coming into the round. So I'd love that. I'd love feedback on the community round structure and, how we can continue to improve there. And then the ultimate call to action is we're a little more than halfway through Gitcoin Grants 20. And so as Kevin mentioned, hop into grants.gitcoin.co, check out the rounds, please support them and help us make this the best Gitcoin grants yet that we've run on top of GrantStack.
One thing I know that's on the prep doc that I don't know that we covered, although I might have missed it, is that Passport is completely hidden in the back this time around. So basically, Gitcoin Passport is the tool that does Sybil resistance and quadratic funding. And now it's completely hidden in the back, so there's no friction contributing to QF rounds. I think they're using a machine learning algorithm in order to figure out who the Sybil attackers are in conjunction with the collusion resistance tool, cluster mapping. We've had Joel Miller on the podcast before with Umar to talk about cluster mapping. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's a fantastic summary.
Cool. Well, Meg, maybe I'll end with you. Help us see the forest for the trees here. What's your purview as the GM of Grants Lab about where this is all going? And zooming out, what do you see when it comes to the GG rounds and the direction that Grant Stack and Gitcoin software is going?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is more prescriptive and metric driven funding across the ecosystem, and really kind of trying to lead the industry forward here in getting sharper around the intended impact of grants. And the change that we're trying to create in the ecosystem by funding the open source software rounds. And at the same time, empowering other communities to run their own grants rounds, which is incredibly important for grants of all sizes. Moving forward, I think we want to continue to do more of both of those. So you'll see us partner with communities more frequently to run these rounds, and continue to empower communities to fund what matters to them, acknowledging that a community is the ultimate arbiter of like what matters. Nobody can set those criteria or funding characteristics better than themselves. And looking forward, we just have so much potential in open source software. And so looking forward to growing that round and continuing to fund innovation, and particularly growing our funding around innovation and new and emerging projects.
Yep. And then I'll just really quickly shill this season of Greenpill is all about capital allocation. What ways are we going to be able to do more scalable, precise, democratic, transparent capital allocation on chain? And just to weave in the Gitcoin stuff with that, it almost feels obvious in some ways that quadratic funding is a new on-chain capital primitive for people to use. But I think that the thing I'll highlight in this episode is just the incremental progressive decentralization that we're seeing at Gitcoin. Back around GG 15 or 16, went from the centralized platform to the decentralized platform, and hopefully getting better every round that we have. But now I see with the community rounds, just even more decentralization in the form of the communities actually running a lot of the community rounds as opposed to anyone who works full-time at Gitcoin. So hopefully that leads us on a trajectory of more decentralized capital allocation as more people learn to use these tools, and we'll see more before GG21. Maybe I'll go around and do a round of final questions before we break for the episode. So is there anything I didn't ask that you want to say? And maybe we'll start with Sav and then go to Sejal and then to Mathilda and end with Meg. So Sav, anything I didn't ask that you want to say?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground, right? Just to reiterate some of my earlier comments, we welcome any feedback, good or bad, on kind of the experience with Gitcoin Grants 20 from a product perspective or a process perspective. We'd love to hear that and kind of make sure that we're addressing that and improving, as each round going forward. So that's probably what I would part with, and I'll pass it over to Sejal.
Yeah, I think we covered pretty much everything. I just want to say that since we talked about, more and more communities running their own rounds and sort of decentralizing this whole process, I think there is this community of round operators. So I would, like to use this opportunity to plug in the training that we did, which was, we taught almost 60 people how to run a QF round on GrandStack, right? And there are a couple of them who are actually assisting these communities in running their rounds, right? So we can, if there are communities looking to run rounds but do not have enough resources or want somebody who knows exactly how to do it, please reach out to us and we'll make sure that you have a dedicated round operator who can help you run the round end to end. And looking forward to more new stuff that will happen between GG20 and GG21 and then GG21. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much more to add, but maybe just some final thoughts. I've been around since like GR15, and so I was here when we when we shifted to GrandStack, and I've been through some ebbs and flows with the rounds, and I have to just say that, the vibes and just the energy around GG20 has been really incredible to see. It's just, yeah, I just feel like, the community is really engaged, and especially with the community rounds and just the structure of this round, I think is really positive. So from where I'm sitting, at least, I think that the way that the structure is moving forward and the roadmap that we already are kind of like thinking of is moving in the right direction. So yeah, from my side, I think just keep an eye out on the Gov forum. There's going to be some more there's going to be some retros posted on the community round governance. So would just encourage everyone listening to also just get involved in those conversations as we continue to reiterate, build in public, and improve everything as well.
Meg, take us home.
Amazing. I'll plus one what everybody else said. I'm really excited to continue to decentralize the Gitcoin grants rounds. These are for the Ethereum community, and the more that we can involve the Ethereum community and how they're run, the better. I was hoping that we'd get into like a spicy take too around like Web3 community and education sometime during the grants round or during the episode.
Do it.
But
this is your opportunity.
All right. Oh, amazing. No time like the end of an episode. But I do want to emphasize too that like I think that these programs are so important to fund, that community and education play vital roles in onboarding people to the space. And I would love for other orgs or for us to support another org that's like setting up a fund here, and to figure out how to create a different kind of eligibility and impact mechanism for these projects so that they don't get left behind. I think one of my fears, I think that this is absolutely the right move for our program to switch to a focus specifically on open source software. That's what the funds were raised for. But my fear is that they get left behind, and we have an overly technocratic future. And so I'd love to support champions of impact metrics or evaluation criteria for community and educational projects, whether that's impact-based, reputation-based, or otherwise.
So that's a challenge to the Gitcoin community to bring back Web3 community and education in GG21, and we need credible round operators who are going to be managing that and pitching it. And if that's right, should people reach out to you? Should they go to gov.gitcoin.co to do that? How might people facilitate that?
Yeah, maybe that you can always start at gov.gitcoin.co. It's a shelling point, if you will, for all things grants. I will say that like our current funds are very much dedicated towards open source software, but where we can participate with human capital, with expertise, or by funding grants to develop impact metrics. That's the kind of thing that I'd love to participate in.
Thanks. Well, thanks everyone for coming on the episode. Excited about GG20. GG20, if you're listening, you can contribute until May 7th on grants.gitcoin.co. So this episode will air on May 2nd. So you've got a couple days to contribute. If you're listening, open up grants.gitcoin.co and check out all the latest tech and all the latest projects in the ecosystem. Meg, Mathilda, Sav, Sejal, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you for listening to the GreenPilled.network podcast. You just heard from Meg, Sav, Mathilda, and Sejal on the Gitcoin Grants Lab team, all talking about Gitcoin Grants Round 20. I am excited about them because I think Gitcoin has come a long way. I'm biased as a founder of Gitcoin, and again, disclaimer, I hold GTC, but I just think that Gitcoin's progressive decentralization is really cool to see, and they're funding what matters in the Web3 ecosystem. Thanks again for listening to the podcast. Again, we are building a coordination, a network society of thousands of hackers, dreamers, and doers using crypto to bring positive sum digital systems to the world. If you enjoyed this episode, you can collect it at pods.media/greenpill. Thank you again to SkyWTF.eth, MMAOnchain.eth, and Paul2.eth for being recent collectors of Greenpill podcast episodes. Again, go to pods.media/greenpill to find all the episodes and start collecting today. While you're here, please subscribe, rate, and review to this podcast. It really helps other people find the Green Pill movement, regen crypto movement, and the work that we do here, hopefully building a protopian world with crypto. Well, this was a fun episode. I appreciate you tuning in all the way to the end, and I will see you next time. Peace.